Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Again, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Discover the Magic of ODA, the Oracle Database Appliance. My name is Mark Becerra, and I'm a Territory Manager here for Dbvisit in the Americas. Throughout this time we're going to spend together, I'd really like to encourage you to interact with our presenter by typing in questions and comments to him using the questions pane that's located right there in the GoToWebinar window. We have a lot of information we'd like to get over to you today, so if we can do this, we'll address some of your questions as we go along, and anything remaining we will pick up at the end. If you're going to be mentioning this information on Twitter, can we ask that you please include the @dbvisit tag on your tweets? We'd really appreciate that. Plus, if you'd like to connect with us after this webinar and keep the conversation going, please drop us a note at info@dbvisit.com. We'll be sure to link you up to our updates and upcoming events. We are recording today's session, and we'll get you out a replay link in the next day or so. I'd like to take a minute to tell you a little bit about today's presenter, Chris Lawless. Chris is Dbvisit's passionate Vice President of Product Management and brings with him 12+ years experience in this data replication space. His past experience training DBAs and working in support have taught him the value of live, high-quality customer interaction. He enjoys his role here working with various project teams to make sure customer and partner needs are met. He and his wife are raising 3 kids, 2 dogs, 1 cat, and 12 chickens. Additionally, Chris loves to read, hike, canoe, and participate in mudman races. And now, Chris, over to you.
All right, thanks, Mark. And I'm hoping one of the cats doesn't make an appearance in this webinar today. So we are going to talk a lot about Oracle Database Appliances and a little bit about the history. Then we're going to go into some of the technical specs. Then we're going to follow up of some common sense things to do with those databases. But before we begin, just a little bit about Dbvisit for those who may not know about us. We are a New Zealand-based company with offices in Europe, Asia, and here in the Americas. We only do one thing. We do replication, real-time Oracle replication. And we use it doing 2 different models, which is part of the thing I really like, is we have logical replication and we have physical replication. So it really depends on what the customer needs, and that's what's the solution we can provide to them. We have over 1,300 customers, and they're spread across all over the world on 6 of the 7 continents. As we all know, cloud, cloud, cloud. People talk about cloud all the time. We are 100% cloud ready on all of the platforms you see in front of you, and probably others we don't know about. If you are involved in any cloud, let us know. We'll be happy to test out to make sure we're cloud ready. We probably are, but we're always willing and able to test with new partners. And as I mentioned, we do replication, and 2 types of replication, logical and physical. Our logical replication tool, Replicate, is all about heterogeneous logical replication. It moves data from A to B. You can use it for migrations, for reporting, streaming of data to different targets, MySQL, SQL Server, Hadoop, Kafka, and the like. The other product, Standby, is all about disaster recovery. And we are the worldwide leader of disaster recovery on Oracle Standard Edition. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that solution later today. So let's get into it. Let's talk about ODA. In the beginning, there was Exadata. And if you remember about 10+ years ago, Oracle would talk to you about Exadata, Exadata, Exadata. That's all they wanted to talk about. And I have 2 friends who both use Exadatas. One's here in the medical field in New England, and the other's in California at a university. And they love Exadata. One of them couldn't believe that his queries were running like 50 times faster. The performance on Exadata is through the roof. Everyone loved it. There was just one problem, the price tag. It wasn't really made for everyone. Not everyone could afford or needed that type of performance that Exadata could provide. Oracle listened, and then they came up with the ODA, the Oracle Database Appliance. So in 2011, they announced it, and it served a market. It served that next tier down for people who did not want to buy a full-blown Exadata. Maybe they could buy something smaller. And versions 1 through 5 each got increasingly more powerful and better. And they have this really cool feature that I think is one of those things that Oracle is paying attention to their customers here. They allowed you to license a subset of those cores, and it was pay as you grow. If you needed more power, you could turn more on. So it was a pretty neat feature, and customers liked it. However, it still had a ways to go. It still wasn't for everyone because there was still pricing issues, and some people didn't need all that power. And then in June of this past year, I should say, as we're now in 2017, they have what I call ODA for the masses. There were some really sweeping announcements that changed everything. And in that announcement, Oracle says we have 2 new appliances, the X62S and the X62M, small and medium. And there were 3 things about that announcement that really caught my eye. The first was the price points. As I mentioned, Exadata was high. The other ODA machines were lower, but they still weren't at the everyday man prices. But the announcement in June, the prices were brought down to the availability of every enterprise's reach. If you're running Oracle, there's now a price tag of an ODA that is reasonable and within your budget. And we'll talk about those prices a little bit later. The next thing, it wasn't being sold from Oracle salespeople. It was being sold through partners. And Oracle realized that these machines, the reach was really about getting these partners who have the reach to these small to mid-sized businesses that previously weren't buying Exadata. Partners have all these contacts. So it's being sold through partners. And then the last thing that really struck me, standard edition. The availability to allow someone to put standard edition on an ODA machine was absolutely huge. So those 3 things really grabbed our attention here at Dbvisit. And we're often at conferences and promoting standard edition and promoting all the different Oracle technologies. These 3 things, we also sell mostly through partners. So it was kind of like a perfect storm. But that wasn't it. After June, there was a further announcement, and I believe this was September, that they had 2 more machines to talk about, the ODA X62L and ODA X6HA. The L, of course, stands for large, HA for high availability. The large also allowed SE2 to be installed. And I want to take a moment right now to talk about standard edition. The original announcement just said standard edition. However, as many people know, there were some changes this past year or so regarding standard edition. Standard edition 1 and standard edition were going away, and standard edition 2 was in its place. And in September, they Oracle clarified that if you had an existing standard edition license or standard edition 1 license, you could port those over to the ODA machines. However, I believe it's as of December 2016, anything new purchased would be a SE2 license. So get that out of the way. But the important thing is that the S, the M, and the L all allow standard edition to be in there, which is absolutely fantastic.
Hey, Chris, I hope you don't mind me interrupting you real quick. There's a question that came over right now, and it had to do with this X62L. Somebody's asking, can I run real application clusters or racks on that thing?
So I'm going to ask that. I will take that question, Mark, but I'm going to pause on that question just for a minute because I want to get into why and what they can do with the different machines. It's a great question, so whoever answered it gets a star. So, Mark, that's your job to give out. But I do. I'll just wait 1 minute on that, but it's a great question. So here's our new family, the SML and the HA. So now let's talk about what's in these guys. So the S, it's it's an Intel core, Intel CPU. It has 10 cores. And if you're one of the old guys or gals of computing, you will know that, 10 cores is huge. It's kind of crazy to think that we now have 10 core CPUs. So it's one CPU socket with 10 cores. So it's a pretty beefy machine, what you're getting here. 128 gigs of memory. It can be expanded, but out of the box, it's got 128 gig. So it's got a nice, beefy amount. 6.4 terabytes of raw storage. However, that translates to 2.4 terabytes of usable space. This is because of redundancies and things built into the ODA machine itself. And the cool part about that is that special word, the SSDs. These are all flash arrays. It is absolutely fantastic. So the storage itself is flash, and that means fast, and that's a good thing. And I throw in some other things here that people may care about. We have 2 Ethernet ports, 6 USB ports, standard affairs for what you see. Oracle Linux becomes pre-installed, and the appliance manager comes installed, as you would expect it to. And then again, here's that important thing that I mentioned earlier. On the last line, you can have Enterprise Edition or Standard Edition, customer choice. And that's a huge thing right there in itself. Oracle's saying to the market, listen, people want Standard Edition, we'll allow Standard Edition on this machine. So our next up from the S is the M. And you'll notice really the main ones here are the top 2 lines. Is you'll have 2 CPUs with 10 cores each and 256 gigs of memory versus 128. So it's basically double in performance in many areas of the old one, of the S one, I should say. So much of this is very similar to the beyond that. Again, Enterprise Edition or Standard Edition. It's just a 2 CPU machine versus a 1. And now the L, the large. And Mark, here's where I'm going to kind of answer that question. You'll notice it's very similar to the M. It comes with 2 CPUs with 10 cores each, 256 gigs of memory, just like the M. The difference here is in the storage. Whereas if I go back 1 slide, the M has the same amount of storage, 6.4 terabytes, that the S did. The L is 19.2 terabytes. And all 3 of them, of course, can be expanded if you wish. Now, the last bullet point says Enterprise Edition or Standard Edition. So you can run Enterprise Edition on this one. You cannot run rack, which is what Mark had asked that question earlier. And because of this, it's not really because of this, but one of the things when you deal with rack, you really want shared storage and different servers, and there's a whole reason behind the rack and the high availability. And that brings us to this machine, the X26HA. HA, of course, stands for high availability. And you'll notice that this machine is 2 servers, each with 2 CPUs of 10 core each. So you can think of it as a clustered machine. And that's where we get the HA part of it. And because it's HA, it can run rack and rack 1. And that's the difference. So if you're needing to run rack or rack 1, you will want to get the HA machine. Now there's one caveat: you cannot run standard edition on the HA machine. And I just pause there for a second because I think that's kind of important to note. If you're going to run rack, you're going to get the HA. If you don't need a rack system, you're going to look at the M, the S, or the L. So great question, Mark. Please, people can keep coming with them. And that's that's the family, so to speak. Those are the tech specs. All right, you got the specs. Why ODA? What are the benefits? And I think it can be summed up to 3 things. It's affordable, it's simple, and the performance, the optimization. And each of these we'll dive into. Let's talk about affordable, because that's people always saying, all right, Chris, give us the details. And here it is. It's this simple. The base price for the S is $18,000. The M is $24,000. The L is $40,000. And I didn't put it on here, but the HA I believe is $72,000. So all of these are priced at a point where most organizations can buy them. They are pretty beefy machines for the price. Next one, simple. And believe it or not, simple is a great thing. We all love simple things. Simple is hard. Simple is hard to do. It can be deployed in under an hour. And when I first read about how quickly you could install ODA, I kind of rolled my eyes. And I did it. I was with a team in France this past fall, and we installed the ODA in a little webinar session. And it was great. We got hands-on. We saw it deployed. It's truly 7 easy steps. And of those 7 steps, one of them is cabling. Plugging the Ethernet here, taking the power cord out. It was nice to see it all laid out in simple instructions. And I have a few slides coming up where I can show you how you deploy it with the tool that comes with it, the Appliance Manager. The next part of simple is one vendor. You don't have to call one vendor for support on hardware, another one for networking, another one for the database. This makes it quite simple because there's no more finger pointing that my SCSI drives are pointing at the database, pointing at the network. It's one company. If there's a problem, we know which vendor's at fault. The GUI is really simple and easy to use, and I'll show you the GUI. And management is simple. If you're a DBA, you can do this. You don't need to know all about storage. You don't need to know all about networking. A lot of that is built in, and it's invisible to the DBA. And the next piece is bundled patches. How great is it to get one patch that will solve 4 or 5 of your problems? So every quarter you're going to get a patch, and boom, it will fix any hardware issues, any database issues, any networking issues, all with a bundled patch. And here, for me, thinking in terms of a DBA, it has 2 huge benefits. One, do these patches all work with each other? The answer is yes, because that's how Oracle tested them. They tested those patches together. And 2, rather than taking 4 outages for 4 different patches, it would be 1 outage for 1 patch. And that really makes the life of a DBA simple, and simple is good. And then optimized. It was built and tested as one stack. Just as those patches are tested together, this is built and tested as a stack. And that is fantastic that Oracle can do that. And it was built by engineers building for the Oracle database. It's not generic hardware. It's purpose-built hardware specifically designed for the Oracle database. Again, I mentioned it earlier, but all flash storage, that's got to make a lot of people happy. And then this last bullet point I put in here is I'm not a big storage guy or a big hardware guy that drills into some of that details, but this really kind of struck me when I was at a presentation, is they have this thing called NVM Express Bandwidth, and it's this tool for them to get the SSD drives working. It skips that protocol, the SAS protocol, which is talking to the serial drivers, because you know, it's just an extra step. They skip it. There is no SAS controller. It goes right to a PCI controller. So if you're a hardware guy, you know what that means. It's an extra step. It's faster. If you want more detail, Oracle has a bunch of documents on that. I mentioned the easiness. Well, let's talk about some of that easiness. There's the sign-in. All right, you're ODA and admin, you type in the password. So this is logging into the web console to fire up and start our ODA machine. And honestly, it's always kind of when I show this, people start laughing. You click the button that says deploy appliance. Yes, they actually went, you know, through a lot of effort to remove things, you know. You can see on the slide there it says, and it is tough to read, you know, Oracle database appliance is not configured. Great, let's start deploying. And then, you know, look, on the top, you can see it says system, network, and database. You put in all these information that you would typically put in. The system name, what region you're in, what time zone, what database edition, standard or enterprise, etc. So, again, not a lot of tough decisions to make here. On the networking, all the IP addresses, etc., etc. So, again, simple information that you would have. And then database, the database name, database language, what version of the database, character set, etc., etc. So again, things, it's all right there, convenient, it's together, it's simple. Supply the information, and then we have our database. There it is.
Hey, Chris, this brings up a great question. Looks like this question coming over about how many databases can I put on one of these machines?
That's a good question, Mark. Thanks. There's actually nothing set in stone. Originally, a lot of people would see it as a single instance machine. And that caused a little bit of confusion in the beginning because the word instance itself can be confusing. And the reason they would say single instance machine, it meant non-rack. So for the FMLs, no rack is allowed. For the HA machine, rack is allowed. But there's no limit technically to the number of databases you can have on that. I would tend to say if you're going to have multiples, you're probably not going to put it on the small machine, but you could. It really would depend on the size of those machines. So there's not a specific limit, but it's because of the size of the machine, it'd probably be limited to one or two typically.
So it's just kind of a common sense thing that people will learn as they look at them, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Most likely it's going to be one, but it could be one or two in a few instances. And if they're small, they may put a bunch of them. Yeah. Which actually kind of leads right into this slide, Mark, is, okay, why would you pick ODA versus building your own? And this is one of those things where it could probably be debated. I've had someone tell me that they could, you know, I could build one of these for $17,000. And if that's true, great, go do it. The amount of time you'll spend sourcing and fighting all those different vendors, you could have already gotten, you know, your ODA and deployed it. To me, I would say those three reasons we talked about earlier are the reasons to get this. It's simple, it's optimized, and it's affordable. those three kind of sum it up for me. The rest are kind of backing up that, but it's built-in best practices. These were Oracle DBAs working at Oracle, working with the database team, who worked with the engineering team to build this machine. So it was engineered to work together. I mentioned that high-performance storage, those SSDs. And then single vendor support, again, is huge. So all of those reasons, if you're going to go out and build your own, it just makes sense at this price point, at this simplicity, to get an ODA machine. So you have it, you've got it. What do you do? Now, here's where I always joke. This slide has nothing to do with ODA and everything to do with common sense. Back up your databases. Whether you're on ODA or you build your own, back up your databases. I don't care how, back it up to disk, back it up to tape, just back it up. Do the right thing. So of course, with ODA, you should do backups. Now, you can back it up the old school method, cold backups, you can do clones, etc., etc. You can use RMAN. RMAN is a great tool, lots of features. RMAN keeps improving. It's always been a great tool for the past 10 plus years, but it's even better now. And you can use RMAN. So back up those databases. You can also put backups on your favorite cloud provider. So I know one person who was telling me that he backs up to tape, but then he also puts it on AWS and S3. So it's just another place up in the cloud. And he says, if a tape ever gets lost, I can get it from Amazon. Absolutely true. But there's one other thing I want to talk about, and that does work and it's good. But Oracle actually has a product out there, and I don't know if a lot of people know about this product. I don't know if Oracle's really pushed this as much as they could have or they should have. But it's called Backup to the Oracle Cloud. And it's just what you think it is. The really cool thing is that it's integrated with RMAN. So you can do a regular backup on those Oracle databases using RMAN, and rather than back up to disk somewhere or tape, you can back it up to the Oracle Cloud. It's really neat. You don't have to learn any fancy software. You configure it once, you're good to go. And this is all kind of built in, and you can do it right from ODA backing up to the Oracle Cloud. And they have two methods, metered or non-metered. And back when I first saw this, the metered is still, it's pretty inexpensive. It's a very good price. It was like 2 cents per gig to upload, etc. So you basically do some math and you can figure out your price. And then they have non-metered. And I believe one of the tiers is $33 per month to do a backup to the Oracle Cloud. So that is it's a fantastic thing. They do have sample and trial versions. I definitely suggest people go out and try this and see how you like it. And I put it in here because it is all part of protecting your database. You can use RMAN, you can use ODA, and you can back up to the cloud. So I put that in there. Everyone can do some homework. But at this point, I tell people, well, backups are important. Backups are good. That seems to be a great feature, the backup to the cloud. But it is not the same as a disaster recovery plan. And, you know, everything I just talked about backups all holds true. It's important. But you have to think of this last bullet point, RTO and RPO. And that's where the difference is between the backup and a disaster. And I'm going to get into detail of that in a second. And this is where I always point out is it's not an either-or situation. They work in tandem. A backup and your disaster recovery are kind of, you know, Siamese twins in a way. They're friends. They work together. But a disaster recovery can help you in so many different ways. And on the bottom, I put can be on-premise, in the cloud, hybrid solution, depending on what you need, and I'll cover each of those scenarios. So I want you to think of this. Every night at midnight, you do a backup using RMAN. It doesn't matter if you do it to the cloud or if you do it on tape. You do a backup. It's now 4 p.m. in the day. Disaster strikes in your data center. You have an RPO, that's the potential for data loss, of 16 hours. From your backup last night at midnight through 4 p.m. So now it's a business question. Is that enough? Should I do backups every 4 hours? So again, think about that. But if I'm backing up to tape and I have a fire in my data center, the tape might be at the data center. How soon can I be back up and running? Well, maybe all of last week's tapes were at the data center. And then last week, you shipped it off to a far facility, Iron Mountain, somewhere in Denver. Well, there, how long will it take to get that tape back and have me up and running? And that's the RTO, your mean time to recover, to get you back up and running. So these two are very important. It's the potential for data loss and how long will you be down. And backups usually don't cover you for that necessarily. And that's where it comes in that you'll need a different type of tool for disaster recovery. And here, I have a standard slide that many of you have seen about Oracle Data Guard. Oracle Data Guard has been a long time. For those using Enterprise Edition, Data Guard comes at no extra charge and a great way to protect your database. It takes archive logs from the primary site, ships them over to the standby database, and then applies them. In the event of an emergency, the primary goes away, standby is up and running. Depending on how you configure it, there can be 0 or some data loss, usually very small. But again, I don't want to say the bad thing, but the wrinkle here is that it's Enterprise Edition. What about Standard Edition? Well, with Standard Edition, you don't get Data Guard. However, there is Dbvisit. We are the worldwide leader in disaster recovery for Oracle Standard Edition. This is the world we live in. We're used to Standard Edition. We know about it. So this is where this product could help you do the exact same thing for your Standard Edition environments. And we're happy to say that this is as fresh as you can get. We are officially, as of last week, but we're finally ready, we are officially Oracle Database Appliance ready. So Dbvisit has gone through some testing, some certification process with Oracle, and we're at the ready. So we're happy to announce this, and here's how we do it. If you have one database appliance, you can have another one as the standby site. Now that could be in a data center across the city, it could be in a data center across the country, or indeed, it could be a data center in another part of the world. So you would have a primary where all your workloads going on. Dbvisit standby would then be used to protect your database and send that over to the standby database. Or you may want to take advantage and go into the cloud. So as mentioned earlier, Dbvisit standby is 100% cloud ready. You can go from your database on-prem and put your standby database in the Oracle cloud. And here's where I say is this is the perfect way to use the technologies together. You're using an ODA machine, using cloud, you can use backup, and you can use standby, using all the best available technologies to protect and maintain your database. A little bit of an overview is the above portion of the slide would be our primary site on our ODA machine. The bottom portion would be our target site, either another ODA machine or the cloud. we take those redo logs and we ship them over the internet and apply them to that standby database, thereby keeping that database up to date, and you don't have to worry about losing data. Your RPO is small, your RTO is small as well. And then over on number 1, on the far left side, we have a central console. It's our GUI, so you can monitor all of the above, whether it's in cloud or on-premise. We have a GUI that you can use on a third box, so to speak, to monitor everything. And some key features that you may or may not be aware of with Standby is we do support Oracle 12c multi-tenant. Another important feature is that the repository is outside the database. That centralized GUI has a repository, but it's outside the Oracle database. This is important for customers of AFSU licenses or embedded licenses. We have this really great feature called support packages. Running one command creates a support package. You give it to our support team. It has all the things we need to diagnose a problem and solve it. And another great new feature is this background process. You don't need to schedule anything. As soon as those archive logs are created, our process sees that, grabs them, ships them over to a target, starts applying them. Now, if you want to work on a scheduled basis, it certainly can do that, but this way it's automated. You don't have to. So that's what we really try to strive here, is to be flexible to allow you to work the way you want it to work. Everyone likes pictures, so here's a picture of our GUI. We try to make it kind of look appish, I call it. I love it. It's really easy. You know exactly where to press when you're trying to do something. On the bottom, you see what things are happening. We also have a pop-up when you're trying to do something, and you can see here it tells you exactly what it's doing at all times. Here, it's someone's taking the backup to create a standby database. And we have these templates. So if you're going to be doing something multiple times, you can save it as a template for different databases. So that was a little bit of our GUI about how. I invite everyone here to read a case study that was recently done. And over this past few months, there's a company called Das Protection Juridique. They're a Swiss company dealing with insurance, and they really needed a solution that they wanted to use Oracle SE because it had all the features that they needed. They wanted something high performance, but they absolutely needed disaster recovery. As I mentioned, they're an insurance company. They can't afford to lose data. So while they were shopping, our partners in Switzerland said, you should look at the ODA machines. They allow standard edition licenses, and you can protect them with Dbvisit. So it was really that great, unique bundling of these machines combined with our software and Oracle database that allowed them to get exactly what they needed at the right time. And we're finding that there are many companies in this small to mid-sized market that need exactly that. They either have legal mandates that they have to protect the data, they of course want high performance, and they want something affordable. So they go with Oracle SE. And I don't know if there's many people here who are on APAC, but there may be. I know there's people from Europe, the Americas, North and South, and in Asia attending. We have found out that there's 4 different sessions that will be run, 3 in Australia, 1 in New Zealand. So if people want to go and learn about this, they're very welcome to go to these events. I've heard the date may change a day or two, so check back with us or check with your local Oracle office. And I just wanted to say one quick special thank you. Arrow France, which is a distributor in France, had a road show in France, and they invited me along to many of the sessions. So it was great that I could learn a lot about ODA. I got to play with some ODA machines. We got to test standby on them. So wanted to say thank you for all the work they did, Arrow France, with us. And with that, I come to the conclusion. I believe I hit exactly 40 minutes as promised. And if there's any questions, I open it up. But I'll also say, as I put my email on the slide, if someone thinks of a question 20 minutes from now or a day from now, they're welcome to email me with a question.
Okay, Chris, yes, we do have several more questions here sitting in the queue. So before we wrap it up, let's try to tackle a couple of these. Here's one question. Are these things really only sold through partners? Can't I acquire these directly from Oracle?
I've been told that it's only through partners. I have not learned of any that have been sold through. I'm sure there's always an exception. Maybe Larry Ellison's favorite customer might get one direct, but from what I understand and what I've been told at Oracle is that they are sold only through partners, and they have a special kind of channel set up. And if someone calls in there to Oracle's to send them to a local partner for them to buy.
Okay. This was kind of related to that. The dollars that you were showing, are there any discounts on those dollars, or is that kind of how the price is going to sit on these things?
Good question. So the pricing that I did show, that is list price for the basic machine. If you upgrade memory or storage, it could go up a little bit. That is the list price. I don't know if partners may or may not be able to get a slight discount. You'd have to talk to the Oracle partner for that. Unfortunately, I don't know the details of their partner relations. But at that price point, there's probably not a huge margin in those. They seem to be pretty tight on what the price is. But again, check with the local partner.
Okay, and what about Dbvisit's, interest in this product going forward? I mean, how does Dbvisit feel about this product, about this database product, as far as being a DR machine, for example?
I think it's fantastic. I won't give exact numbers, but we definitely have multiple sold of these. Many licenses have been sold doing ODA to ODA backups. We also have some people interested in migrating to the ODA machine with Dbvisit software. So I think, it hasn't even been a year that it's out. I think right about now is when people are really starting to get excited. It's also a new budget year. People are really starting to look to upgrade hardware. I foresee the next 12 months to be really good for ODA and for Dbvisit. People do need disaster recovery. It just makes sense to use us in this situation.
That's fantastic. And one thing this person noticed was that it appeared as though all the disk is all SSD in these machines, and they're just wondering, it would appear as though this machine would be a higher performance machine than our current 4-year-old server technology that we've got. What do you think about swapping the roles, about making the ODA the primary and using our older hardware for the time being for the DR environment?
Yeah, Mark, that is a great question. Let me kind of throw out a scenario. You're on Linux on your machine. It works, but it's time for an upgrade. It's tired. What you can do is put standby on that machine. Put standby on the ODA machine. Do a graceful switch over. No data loss. Now it's called a role reversal. You're making the standby machine your primary, and it would make your old hardware the backup. It absolutely will work. I will give one little asterisk. It will have to be the same version of the database, of course, and the same operating system. It'll have to be a Linux machine. But other than that, absolutely.
That sure seems, just speaking objectively, it sure seems like a good role for standby to actually help make that migration work. That's that role swapping you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
All right. Well, listen, our time has come to an end. We thank you for joining us today. We'll soon send out the links as promised to the replay of this webinar, along with some other information and materials that are sort of relevant to this whole topic of DR and machine efficiencies, etc. On behalf of Dbvisit and Chris Lawless, this is Mark Becerra saying so long. We hope we can engage with each one of you in a more meaningful dialogue shortly, leading to cost savings and getting this DR project done. Thank you very kindly. Have a great day.